Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randirhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little lamb.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
You described the president as erratic, foolish, behaved irrationally, bizarrely. You can't leave him alone for a minute. He saw conspiracies behind rocks. He couldn't tell the difference between his personal interests and the country's interests.
I don't think he's fit for office. I don't think he has the competence to carry out the job. There really isn't any guiding principle that I was able to discern other than what's good for Donald Trump's reelection.
I am the chosen one.
This was really scary because you had John Bolton, who I hold in such low regard. I mean, this is a man who's never seen any foreign country that he wouldn't be willing to bomb, right? He's just a right-wing lunatic war hawk. He thinks that bombing things is the answer to everything. And then you have Donald Trump, who is erratic and ignorant and uninformed and unwilling to be informed, a man who puts his interests ahead of America's interests and hence Americans' interest. And watching Bolton tell us that, you know, he may be bad, but Trump is worse was such a hard freaking thing to watch last night because I'm like sickened by these two men. And when Bolton went to work for Trump, I mean, you just had to sit there and wonder, like, what good could come of that, right? What? And then Trump started falling in love with Kim Jong-un. And, you know, Bolton was a national security advisor who wanted to bomb Iran. Remember the original axis of evil as devised by one John Bolton was Iraq, Iran, and North Korea. You remember the axis of evil speech that W gave. I remember it because I was there and I walked out. I literally walked out on a State of the Union because the president of the United States was referring to an axis of evil, countries he wanted to bomb. And he eventually bombed one of them. And it was really freaky and upsetting and frightening. And the Republicans were just clapping. And it was. So anyway, now John Bolton goes to work for Donald Trump and he stays there for 17 months, right? He's the national security advisor. Replaces, you know, John Kelly. He replaces Michael Flynn, who is unable to continue because Michael Flynn is literally offering to kidnap a guy who lives in Pennsylvania, a Turkish cleric, on behalf of his client, the dictator Erdogan, who wants this Turkish cleric Gulen kidnapped and given to Turkey so that they could dispose of him, much the way Saudi Arabia disposed of Jamal Khashoggi, right? And so he couldn't continue. And John Bolton is one of those guys that knows all this. John Bolton is one of those guys that knows that Donald Trump is telling things to foreign countries and threatening foreign countries with aid when they're an ally to us, like Ukraine, threatening their military aid unless they investigate Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. And this is why Donald Trump was impeached. And John Bolton knew this. But he doesn't testify. He refuses. He wants a subpoena. And the Republican Senate refused to subpoena him. Tim Scott from South Carolina, who likes to tell stories about how often he's been pulled over by cops because he's black, or how the Capitol Police won't let him into his own office because he's black, even though he's wearing his Senate pin, but doesn't want to put any meaningful police reform on the floor, but also voted 2 times not to subpoena John Bolton, now says he wishes John Bolton would testify. Oh, I wish he would have.
Of course, this comes as John Bolton has made some extraordinary allegations against the president. I know that you know John Bolton well. He is certainly not a member of the deep state. He is not a liberal Democrat. What do you make of his rather serious allegations against the president?
Well, I do wish that Mr. Bolton would have come into the House under oath and testified. One of the things about making allegations in a book, $29.95, certainly is going to be a bestseller, I'm sure. The problem is that when you're selling it in a book, you're not putting yourself in a position to be cross-examined. So for $29.95, he can monetize his national security clearance, but under oath, he would have had an opportunity to answer questions and not just make assertions. It would have been good for him to come to the House, answer the questions under oath, and be cross-examined so that we would have more information about fact patterns that he suggests are true. So far, it looks like he's monetized it more than he has actually provided a fact pattern.
Now, there's something very interesting there. If you're a layman or you are just now getting into U.S. politics, Tim Scott is a senator. He doesn't work in the House. He works in the Senate. And the Senate had 2 opportunities to subpoena John Bolton. Tim Scott, as a senator, voted no 2 times. Now he's sitting there on the Sunday show blaming the House, where John Bolton said he would not appear. He said he would not. The House wanted to subpoena him, but they would have seen a long, drawn-out legal battle. So this is really, interesting and hypocritical for him to sit there and say, oh, well, the House. Now, John Bolton was asked, and this is the only reason why I watched this thing last night, because otherwise I couldn't care less about John Bolton. I don't think that he is somebody to be listened to. I don't think he understands anything about good foreign policy. I think he thinks the answer is to bomb everything on the planet all the time. When he was ambassador to the UN, he wanted to lop 11 floors off of the UN. And he was joking about taking 11 floors off of the UN after the World Trade Center was bombed. So really, nothing. But I wanted to hear what he was going to say to Martha Raddatz when she asked him, why didn't you testify? Why didn't you just show up? Why did you need a subpoena? You had all this information. Why didn't you could have made a difference, okay? You could have.
You were a star witness to something the president was on trial for, something you say you now find deeply disturbing, possibly criminal, yet you felt no obligation at all to tell the American people about this, whether in testimony on the Hill or an interview or a statement or anything?
I was fully prepared if I got a subpoena. I think the way the House advocates of impeachment proceeded was badly wrong. I think it was impeachment malpractice.
You could have been that person providing that testimony.
And it would not have made any difference.
What?
How can you say that? How do you know?
Because minds were made up on Capitol Hill.
But you're also saying, had they looked at, it was too narrow. They were just looking at Ukraine, and they should have looked at all these things that you're outlining in the book. If they didn't know about those things from
you could have told them.
How could they do that?
Because an impeachment process that was serious and not partisan, like Watergate, would have taken the time to cover all these areas. They failed utterly to accomplish what they wanted. In fact, they made things worse because their strategy fitted with the Trump political strategy. Keep it narrow and move it fast.
But now he is bringing it all out and getting paid for putting it in a book.
This is the sickest, saddest human being, second only to Donald Trump, maybe third, tertiarily. You got your Donald Trump, you got your Bill Barr, who, by the way, is running the Justice Department like a mob. He's literally running it like a racketeering corporation, not the Attorney General at the Department of Justice, right? But he just sat there and told us that Donald Trump is an erratic, conspiracy theory-loving douche who will sell out this country and has sold out this country, and you saw him sell out this country time and time out, and you still wouldn't testify, and now you're going to blame it on the House. Tim Scott is going to blame it on the House. These people... RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.